data sets and the amount of energy it takes to create these things and actually to run them. But there's an alternative idea which is about like small data where it just remains on your machine and it doesn't go anywhere. And there's another concerning thing where instead of like, because we're using black boxes, some of these black box systems, you chuck stuff in, and this refers to the actual name of the project, which is NINO, which actually is a computer programming term, which means nonsense in, or nothing in, nothing out, or nonsense in, nonsense out. So we've just been thinking about what happens. You chuck the stuff into some model. You don't know what's going on in there, and you get back some other kind of data, as opposed to a data set where you can actually open it and you can see what's happening with your data. Yeah. So this is the sort of background of the thing. So we've been trying out all these different markerless mocap systems during the residency
to see which
one of them is hardcore enough to use in live performance. Unfortunately, the sort of sexy, expensive one was having some other kinds of issues.
Yeah, but I think we probably will use that system because there's another piece of work that could have been made, which would have been with, 5 of the dancers working in and out of the system. And also, because there's, they're not necessarily the marker, it means that there can be contact, there can be different things that you can't necessarily do with optical, unless you have a really huge array of cameras. And we did bring, I don't know, an R8 camera system here, because we did motion capture everybody, from the pre-recorded avatars that you saw at the end. And yes, I think in the future we really want to work with it, because it's also really great for an audience, because of course it means the audience can step in, and it could be really exciting to have. Almost like without seeing moving around in and out. It would be really great. So it would have been a different project. Yeah. I think it could have been like that.
I would like to turn to you because it was also quite exciting that I met you like in the stage when maybe you can say how you actually met, but yes. But what was fascinating for me that one of the rehearsals you wrote a piece of music and then you started to share like how this piece of music was made. But maybe you can just say a bit of the AI and your world, how, because I remember you said kind of images or things and that. Yeah.
But there is, I can explain a little bit the process of creating the music because both Ruth and Bruno, and I should know because it's like a more Latin name, but I'm like thinking, okay, so they both heard my music through this radio station I have, which is, just stuff that people listen to when I want them to drive and listen to this music. So they said, well, okay, we have some interest in maybe using your music for this project. And I go, wow, that's great. Well, let's do it. But what was different for me is that I don't necessarily make music for performances. I mean, it's a personal project. But they said, okay, let's work with you. And I said, great. And then when they arrived here, I said, well, let me try to create some music that's new, that's not something that's there yet. And then we did. We created something new. I really think that that process was very interesting for me.
It was really great because because Bruno had listened to loads and loads of radio stations around Budapest, right? Like how many did you listen to?
To find a musician, we asked the venue and they gave us and then there's a thing called Soundgarden, which is radio stations all over the world, all ones that are streaming, so I listen to every single streaming radio station in Budapest and Violence, which is about 76, so this is all. And then there was two that really stood out to be interesting. I mean, lots of it's just his chart hits kind of cracking, just like, like Radio 1 kind of stuff, and it's just like, one one of them is religion. I mean, no, it's not great for what we wanted, right? It's great if you want to listen to pop music, that's fine, and there's no problem with that. But for what we wanted, this was Marcus's radio station. It was very weird.
And the second day we met
Esoteric.
Marcus, I said to him, I was like, we're doing this whispering. We're doing whispering in the piece, and we're doing whispering to envelop the whole sound in a whispering way. And it just became this whispering. And then we realised that, you know, we were sounding and still releasing as well, you know, making sounds, you know, which is really...
So then I created
so then he created
that song that has all the whisper. They're onomatopeias in Hungarian. You know? The thing is, I don't speak Hungarian. I mean, you know, I've been living here for a long time. I don't speak it. So what I did is I got AI to make those noises, and I, you know, found, you know, my wife is Hungarian, so we talked. What are the sounds that you know, a lot of people would say, you know, when they want to say the buzz of a bee or the sound of you know, a dog barking or something, and I got those words and I put them through the AI and created this, you know, stream of like almost whispering that became the base for the song. I mean, the song is much more than that, but it has this base of whispering. And then the other thing is, you guys came over, and remember that you told the story about my dog.
Oh, come on,
that's
yeah.
a great story.
Not Bollard, what's he called?
Bollard.
Marcus was showing me some of this stuff that he'd been making, and the dog's normally sits, it's a gorgeous, it's a Vizsla dog. It's underneath this table where the computer is, and I mean, he's a beautiful dog. And I was sitting next to Marcus, and the dog just, I'm not kidding you, it literally went like that and moved me out of the way.
Because he was jealous.
He's jealous, and he was on all fours, but he really just went like this, get out of the way, so that became all the nuzzling and all the movement. One section became really primal and really like, and it was, it was
Yeah, I can see
Bollard's piece.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just like a
It was almost, you know, human.
A dog that
like,
tries to
get
get
out of
the
here,
hand,
you know.
to get the paw. You know, it wasn't like that. It was really human. And you said he uses his paw to open the door.
Oh, he opens the door. Yeah, I mean.
So it was interesting.
Yeah, just to join the track, you know, we were rehearsing in the studio, and then you gave us either an image or something to work with, and then we did something that was not really around the theme you were giving, and then you said, oh, that was great. So, and then you said, we have to be careful, because whatever we do, you're going to bring it into the keys.
I know.
And even today, something appeared on stage. So I think for me, this was so great. And lots of things, lots of tiny things got into the work, into the creation. When it just happened, then you were like, oh, I'm going to take that. Just be careful, you're dropping something in, and then it's going to be huge.
Yeah, they really have to be careful with that. Because they go off and just do something stupid and like, we'll keep that. Like, oh no.
Yeah, that was great. So maybe we can ask Chula, like, how was this for her? Because this is not so usual. I mean, well, we're not going to talk about skinny listening, but John Skinner was a choreographer and a dancer, and she had a company when she worked on technique. She did call it releasing dance, but we talk about the 70s, 80s. So, and the world changed a lot, the dance world changed a lot. And I have been dancing and creating in Chile too, but I think this is our first performance creation where Skinner gave the core, and even some of the imagery, some of the practices became the essence for the movements and for the performance. So how is it for you as a performer to work with Ruth, Bruno, and Skinner, or anything else you
I'm very happy. I'm very happy, and it was really beautiful to dance with you on stage. I really have to say, because I don't think we ever, really, which is important. in the beginning, I had like two feelings. One was the nostalgia that I know this technique, and another one I discovered new layers of the technique. So like my past and my present met at the same time, and I really, really enjoyed. And I realized, because they were like younger dancers, and just how, you know, letting go things is how difficult to understand how to let go the things to get the trends through fragility. So it's like, it was just amazing, and all the flashback keep coming back to me. And when I started to learn this technique, I remember I was like, my daughter was 1 year old, so I searched for something to train myself as a dancer again, but give my time, you know, give time for myself to realize how I'm a dancer as a mother. So it was really a long process for me. And since that, I'm using this technique in my creations, but in different ways. So somehow I took back into the roots. And it was really interesting because I learned it from you, and I took another color and then another universe from you, and these two together was really something really, really beautiful. So I absolutely enjoyed it. I mean, I luckily, you know, because when we did the audition, I knew that I would have a premiere. And I was like, if I do this project and my own project, then how will I, you know, how I'm going to manage? And another project just I came back from Bucharest this night, which is like technology, and there's like 3 projects. I was like, oh, this is going to be hardcore. And I was like, just before my premiere, it was a solo in National Dance Theatre, I was like, you know, I was missing something from my own solo. And I realized, like, these are the solutions, you know, I could really like, but in a really beautiful way to benefit, because me, I was forcing myself to do so, and then all the things he like was like, okay, let go. So like, really treat myself nicely in order to be here in the room presence and to be there with my own soul, and also like, just came back as I said, and it was so nice that you really like give me like, how do you say, the time and everything, so you didn't put any pressure on me in this situation. I felt always safe when I entered the room, like, I can be myself, and if I'm here like this, I don't know, this energy, this is maximum energy, you accept, yeah, it's wow, I wish I could be like this to myself, you know, so it was a real learning process, like how to, like, yeah, so I'm really here.
So if you have any questions to any of us.
I'm curious if there is a reason why you put those two things together. I mean, Skinner with the virtual universe. Is there a reason, or is there just
Do you know, I think it's just, I think it's always been there for me, because I've been doing it for decades, a technique. But I don't think I've been confident enough to actually say, this is what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? And also this is more of a challenge, because we were trying to take, you know, not just, we were trying to take some of the pedagogy actually onto stage, which is, you know, classes, almost like a little bit of class on the stage, and whether that would work, without feeling like it was necessarily plagiarism of the class, but but the relationship with the virtual world, I mean, you know, who is it? Suzanne Lana talks about virtual powers, and I think that there's something in the imagination in the Skinner releasing classes where you can go to a really different place. And it sounds out there, but you can. You can be lying down, you can receive an image, and some music will be played, and you might not get up and dance, but you might be sweating from the fact that you're actually really taking in this information physically, in your tissues, and so on. So for me, it's, you know, it fits perfectly, the virtual world. But I would almost think, I think it's probably just because that is my background, and I feel more and more strongly how what a genius she was. I mean, and I just feel like that, I can now be more confident about saying that I'm actually, it really is embedded, and it really is the underpinning of a lot of what I've made with Bruno from the first time we worked together. There's something in there. And she's also very interesting. I mean, like, I suppose she was ahead of her time. She worked with Martha Graham and Les Cunning and Anthony bodies, and she developed this technique because she got an injury working with Les Cunning.
And now you're injured too.
And now I'm injured. But anyway, so maybe I'll develop a new technique. But she, and I think there's a through line of her work, and also there's a lot of the child in her work. She taps into something primal and playful. And there's something of the child that she really did. One of my favourite stories is, it was through, I don't know, maybe Thomas might know, but, there's Mabel Todd, and then there's Corbell Hunter, and all these amazing women that were teaching, and Corbell Hunter taught children dance classes, but instead of saying, do a spiral, she would actually bring things from nature into the class, and she would throw a sycamore seed so it would spin like this, and the children would follow, So there was this other world, this other playful world created through these really simple and I find that really
Yeah, so it's more like a practical question. So there is a movement research part, which is highly intuitive, and also the somatic movement research is also many times very subjective process. It's always something becoming. Meanwhile, the technological part, we need to create pipeline, and it's more like methodical. And my question is how did you deal with this kind of duality of the nature of these two kind of practice? And I think it was 6 weeks, right?
Or is it
7 weeks. So it's because I feel like somehow it can be very challenging that if there's a very close pipeline or a flow which is decided, it can really limit, for example, the movement research, or if there is a very open movement research, it can be very frustrating, the other part. And I'm just curious, how was the conversation between the two practices, and what do you think about how is when it's appearing on stage, how is the hierarchy, or is there any hierarchy between the technology and the physical presence?
I don't know. I think we always talk about this thing that if we should, it's got technology and stuff, whatever, but it should always work if the electricity goes out and you've just got a candle. You've got to have that as a kind of, you've got to be able to do it if you just have to do it by candle. It should stand alone by candlelight, right? And then everything else is everything else on top of that is like gravy. So it's, if it's great when you can get there.
I think everything should be able to stand alone.
Yeah.
And also as well, this is a work in progress, so it felt very episodic to me, and little scenes, and perhaps the beginning, and maybe if we were to carry on,
one day it'll be finished.
We might lose some things, but it's quite interesting trying to work in that way, because we came here, we hadn't been in Budapest ever before. I only knew Esther from 10 years ago. I hadn't really seen you for 10 years, and I didn't know, we
You haven't
didn't
motion
know.
captured Esther for 10 years.
I know, but we motion captured Esther before, but you know, we didn't know everybody either. So, and it's also, I think it's more about timetabling. I mean, come on. It's about scheduling, trying to get everybody together. I mean, trying to get like all the dancers together on the same day. We only have 3 days together, all of us.
Does that include today?
Yeah, no.
I
Maybe
know.
3.5, maybe 4. Maybe 4 including today. But then today was a bit, obviously quite bitty because it's, you know, tech runs and blah, blah, blah. But it's interesting what you say, because like, I often think about that, think, oh my God, I wonder whether if you had all the dancers all the time in software, doing yes all together, having hours and hours to play, what would we make? And I think it would be a very different piece, actually.
But necessarily better.
And I don't think it necessarily.
We're trying to do stuff that's
I don't think it's very fresh.
We're interested in chance and randomness and improvisation, and skin release is really good, especially for being motion captured, because there's a kind of high dynamic range in movement. So you get a lot of different moves. And the thing is, once you record something in a computer, it's basically that's it, it's kind of done. And so we always try and, what you're supposed to do in classical motion capture film production, you're supposed to rehearse lots of times and then do the takes, because the cleanup and the recording, that's it, like the expensive part. So you just want to do that as few times as possible, so you just everything gets over rehearsed. And so we do the opposite, we just do like a take. And we just use it because we're trying to retain in some ways an element of the liveness. This is why we use some of the programming techniques and randomness, and we're running stuff and trying to run everything in real time because we want to keep it as like loosey-goosey as possible. Because really, it would obviously be a lot easier for us if we just did everything as a video. We just play the video, you know, and all the kind of CGI stuff's just all animation. Because then it'd probably be better, maybe. But would it be? But it wouldn't be. We couldn't change.
I'd be interested to know what you think, because also as well, I always think about, oh yes, we could make a really very neat parcel that was like this, and then how would you be able to enter into that work? Because it's partly you're on the stage with us, and actually you change how everything happens.
Like energy.
You're like an energy, yeah, of course. And this whole piece was about energies in many ways. Actually, we often talk about energies.
Ruth,
I don't know whether it was
I mean,
the answer to your question, but it's
just one thing I was going to raise. I mean, I was going to talk about the moment when you say that if you're recording someone and suddenly that recording ends, all of a sudden that avatar falls off into the background. When you're saying she liked that and she wanted to keep that, which is a mistake. It's actually an error of the software that the AI or the can't, you know, if the person isn't moving, it has to put the person sitting or the avatar sitting. So it's just, it can't just hang there. So that idea to me is perfect to exemplify what the process is. It's the imperfections of the process of getting the dance into the digital that makes it interesting. And the same thing I think with AI in anything. Like when I'm using AI to do some illustration, which I like when the AI makes a mistake and has an extra finger or an extra mouth somewhere and eyes where it's not supposed to be. Instead of erasing that, I build something from that and go my way with that. And I think that's the process that is so exciting to see.
And it's interesting because I know quite a few choreographers who like to work with the glitch, for example, but they make a piece about the glitch. You know, it's not about that. You said it perfectly. It's the process. It's actually all a process. So it just cycles into it. You've got your hand up.
Yes,
for
and there
ages.
is another one.
Now I was just thinking now about the glitch is the glitch if you make performance. Is a glitch if you want to glitch.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you for the performance. It was just very fascinating with this one moment we were speaking about how, if I understood it right, that this material should still work without technology, only next to the light candle. And I was just like after reading your concept and like seeing this very cross-disciplinary work where everything leads into everything. And I think a little bit interesting when you think about dependence and codependence within this framework in which you work. Yeah, I think it's.
Well, it's a really, that's a really computer programming thing. There's like a lot of dependency in all the software stuff. Every file requires another file, requires another file, and it's like a whole. That's like a whole nightmare about like some of the naming conventions of some of the levels. So end up using it and change it in the software, and then basically you can break the dependencies and it massively falls apart. I think. It's just an interesting question.
It is an interesting question because I'm just thinking about the semantics. I'm just thinking about your language because I always wanted to make a piece called Drag Child to Parent, and of course that's a confused pronoun language. Drag Child to Parent. But think codependence. I'm just thinking. Sorry, I just went in a.
I think the good question is like because this
Tease
idea
a bit
of
more
like a
out.
candle.
Tease a bit more out.
Shall I?
Yeah.
Just because this idea of the candle in the environment with no technology, but for example the physical material being around, like it sort of suggests a wish for a certain level of independence of the movement material, which I might have like questions about like how I feel like invited to witness the beauty of dependence, I think, in this space. Like, that I need the tech to work in order to work, the tech needs me to work in order for it to work. This kind of codependency that somehow makes this so fascinating to me in this space. So that's why I was a little bit surprised about this answer, and I wanted to get some more insight on like, how your brain works in that.
Yes, because in a way I answered opposite to that.
But that's exciting.
I answered the opposite. I have to answer the opposite to that, and yet it's really the partnerships and the.
Yeah, no mocaps and no dancing people, no mocaps, no avatars moving around. It's very dependent on that.
I mean, you are researching relationality. You are researching interdependence and relationalities, aren't you? It's not just, you're not researching Lee Skinner release, it's part of that, but you're releasing this whole interview, you are releasing your research. That's great, of course. You are researching the whole interactivity and the relationality there, including the participants. That's what came at the end. So. And that struck me when you talked about collage and you talked about charts. And at some point, I was sitting and I thought, oh, surrealism. Oh, I see this I see a techno surrealism, and which is and it celebrates that in a way that was very satisfactory, sensorial, and I could say a lot of things what I do about it.
There's something, I just wanted to say, okay, you could just go with Skinner releasing, but there's something about the philosophy of it, and the ethos of it, and that could be what you're talking about, in a way.
And the process.
I think, if I understand correctly.
What struck me when you talked first, and you talked about what you're doing. I thought, oh, you have a very clear process, and you have a very clear body-minded process as a dance maker, and it's very gooey and it's very open. But you are aware of what your process is, and I think, and that the techno people and the people who develop the technologies have a super clear process. Where there is a whole industry behind it. There's Sony and God knows what, and Disney, and it's a huge huge knowledge of process, but what works for me is that you come in there with a very clear process as an embodied person also. If you didn't have a clear process, this would be, for me, overwhelmed by the celebration of the technology. And what strikes me is that the aliveness. Sorry, chat.
Do you have something else? There was another question. Yes, we come to.
If I can add something, to this, just an example that one day when I came into the room and you already created the avatars, and honestly, I have to say, I'm very skeptical to technology. This is my reason.
Good. Everybody should be.
Everybody should be.
And even, Skinner with this beautiful imaginary world and this okay. And then at one point I came to the room and I saw the avatars and there was one avatar, this black, and I kind of like it. Wow, this is really amazing. It makes me think of something, and then it opened the world like wow, because I wrote these kind of characters in my mind and in my meditation and in my creation, and I was like, just these characters could be like the one, and it's like you kind of step in my brain, and so, in a way that I would never guess. No, I would never guess that you and AI and all these things together brought something on screen. I was like, I started to, how do you say? Not narrative, like some universe open with this character and also with the others. But I was just, and then you told me that this is me.
Well, when you said that, I was like, okay, I've got a hook now. So that's why we got you back in to do some motion capture with Helen, who's just behind over there. And that was when it was slightly more prescriptive, because I just thought, hang on a minute. She said this, I want her to be that character. So that wasn't chance. It's like, if you can relate to that character, I suddenly want you, so without you knowing, we put your motion capture onto that character, and then you came in, we saw it.
So it was a really beautiful example of it's working actually. The Skinner, me, and the motion capture, and you create the avatar and you put together, and it's like,
And that's why you have to be careful when you work with me to offer up any suggestions, because often I'll keep them even if they're almost like the tennis ball today. Because you were playing with your, the stretcher thing with the tennis ball, and I was thinking, ooh, 5 minutes before the project.
So there was another question before you? Yes.
It's actually really nice to flew into this because I was curious. Background, I come from puppetry background, and for me, costumes and modifications of body like mask or turning yourself into creature is really, and then I went into movement research and movement education research. So for me, this is, I don't see it as an alienating thing, technology. For me, these like mock-ups and avatars are really a costume, but in digital space, where you can look at yourself as a puppet in a space. So I was curious throughout the whole process if there was any movement quality that was discovered through going into these characters, or it was really coming from the body put into the digital. So if there was any feedback or something, research going into how the putting on these avatars changes the way the body reacts, because you want to discover what the creature can do when you suddenly are both yourself and another thing. So it's just, I don't think it should be. I'm just curious.
No, it's really interesting. I'm sorry to bang on about skin releasing technique, but she often talks about marionette strings attached to different parts of the body. So you don't use muscles, you have marionette strings, and it has a lot of suspension in that, a little bit like the puppets, quite light. But I think if we'd had more time, that integration could have happened more. Obviously, we had this glitch with the software. We weren't sure what we were going to work with.
So we had to sort of keep on our toes the whole time we were here, actually, to keep thinking about what we were talking about. I think a couple of times, which was really, I really enjoyed, and I felt like it should have been a week workshop, not just one day, was when we played with the AI camera and Radical at the same time in the studio. It was great, and it was it was really interesting because, of course, you can steal the camera. So I'll just jump back to the avatar later. But you could steal the camera that was on the video feed. You could run up to the camera, you could steal it, you could run around the room, and it would be, oh, you know, it's me, it wants me, it wants me. So this sort of getting in front of one another and all these things came into the work. But then we worked with Radical as well, and it was so interesting to watch Olash working with the avatar, and I found that fascinating because at one point Bruno made him into a trio of the same movement, and suddenly it was, and then you recognised that some sort of port de bras, the sort of port de bras that was happening in the piece was relating to that. So with more time, I think there could have been more integration of that within the choreography from the technology and vice versa, but always being equal, none being ahead of the other, if you know what I mean. Trying to keep the balance, but I think we're slightly limited for time in a way to actually really do that, because that was a good day, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There was actually another thing that you got your own, the Radical works on Android, not on iPhones, but Esther had an Android, so it's like, oh yeah. So we could have more characters like the one that was in there today if you had other phones. And the connection, your internet connection was great, so you could have more in that space. So that became interesting, because that was quite collective, it was quite a group.
Yeah, but just one thing on that, we had just really a few times, maybe once or twice, but when we got to know the characters, and then there was like, we could look at it, because most of the time we were not, and also here during the performance, we were not about to look at the projections, so it's as if it wasn't there. But we had these sessions, and it's quite interesting of like, you know, I do a movement, and then it's the avatar is moving with me, and then what is the interaction between me and my movement on the screen, because there's this tiny bit of delay, and it's also, you know, there were like several avatars, and sometimes we was changing, like I was once the lump was one-legged, and then there was the colorful, or maybe I became just the arm, and then it was for me quite interesting of how it affects actually my movements. Like coming through the visual, but already I was moving, so I was in my body moving, seeing something, and then that effect, especially when you're also able to change the perspective. So for instance, the ground disappeared, so we were moving and the ground wasn't on the projection or seen from below, and then it created a very different movement in me. So I think potentially it is really there, what kind of movement it creates, or how it affects my being in my body when I let that world, that visual that I see into my inner world going into sensation. So obviously,
and when I saw you doing that on that day, and also with the others as well,
yeah.
One of the things that we wanted to do was to pull this script, the lighting rig really low. That's what we really wanted to do in here, but we can't. And cover it with paper and project onto the roof and have the dancers lying on the floor. But we couldn't do any of that. And there's so many things we couldn't do, you know. But actually that would have taken us into, because I remember you coming in and Bolash as well saying, are we going to dance with the avatars? And yes, in the next stage.
So
yeah, you know what I mean?
You saw the potential.
Yeah. So it is really a beginning, so that's it. It's interesting. Great.
So, yeah, is there any more questions? Bernie, was it yes?
Maybe
that's something else.
not yet, or I don't know if my question
feelings when, or how is like the connection, how I connect with what I'm moving with, or I don't know, I have like some kind of question like this, like how can feelings change, like when there's like a third like participant, like an avatar, or like you know that there is something that is also present in the moving, and how is it there in the space or in the I don't know. I can't put the question up. I'm just.
Like,
It's
it's
not
not
a
like an out of
it's not a
body
question,
experience.
but I've written everything that you said down.
Sorry.
Because you've kind of got it. You've got it. And it's relational, and it's relational spaces and relationships, and yeah. It's a good way, good place to end.
Thank you very much for staying with us, and I think really world's opening. So we didn't get things done.
Thanks for staying, and
Yeah, thanks for
thanks
staying.
for coming.
Yeah,
Thank you.
double thanks.
Thank you so much for staying for the questions.
Yeah.
For the talk. And just for your info, if you're interested in movement and technology, in end of October, beginning of November, we are going to show 3 more work in progress shows from the same MODINA project. So we hope to have you back.
Ki kéne kapcsolni a gépeket, én nem akarok hozzá.
Can you get my back from Paul? I think he's trying to get the drink.
That's a scary thing.
Yeah, I think it was kind of back. I think so. Oh, it's not in there.
It's okay, I'll watch. Yeah, but I'll. Yeah, okay. Perfect. Yeah.
Itt még van hely, és ott is elindítottuk, ha majd megy.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming and thank you for staying for the discussion. We are really happy on behalf of Trafó to have Gibson Martelli here for the residents. We organized this showing in the framework of the MODINA project, the Creative Europe project, Movement Digital Intelligence, Interactive Audience. That's the full name. And you've experienced some of it already. And now you will hear more about the process and you will be able to ask your questions after a while. And now I give the floor to Esther Gall, who was part of the process. She is a dancer, choreographer, singer, releasing teacher, but best pedagogue. I think I don't even have to introduce her. She was part from Budapest from the local scene. So have a great discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for staying. And we're going to speak English without translation. So if someone needs, maybe you can just go and sit next to each other.
I can translate it.
If someone, yeah, if valakinek szüksége van fordításra, mert ha mondjátok, hogy lassabban, akkor vagy esetleg megismételjük valamit. So I was just talking about maybe we should speak sometimes slower, understanding this needs some help or something. Okay, so coming out of from performing, it's quite interesting to go again from the body into the talking. But let's talk from our bodies, and we were sitting on stage, so hopefully it was somewhat participatory, not just because a few people had the chance to practice a little bit of dancing with an avatar that was on the screen, but also because there was an intention that all of you who are going to observe somehow be part of this world or these worlds. And I think what's also there in this MODINA is dance and technology. And it's, for me being part of this project, it's quite interesting how these two relate, separates or meets. Or maybe it's just one. You know, and I think it has been there for the last, not just 10 years, but more. And I was fascinated throughout the process of how Ruth was guiding us dancers into our inner land. And then seeing the imagery, and this land was like peering through Bruno's and Ruth's work on the screen. And there was kind of a dialogue that wasn't forced. It was just there by nature. So this was really exciting. So I just would like to give Bruno, if you'd like to say a word, but I'll just hand it in to you. You can say just a few words about your work as performer, artist, and I wrote down your creative challenges. And just say a few words. You can also say something related to this project, but also in general about your work. As an intro, just a sentence or two. You can start. No. My focus is on you now.
Okay, yeah, so I work with Ruth, and I think we've got like a few themes that we return to again and again. One of them is like camouflage and all of that entails. In a wider sense, it's a kind of a way of thinking about landscape. And there's also another part of camouflage which is about illusion, creating illusions, and sort of disguise. That's one of the themes that we kind of return to again and again. And all the work that we make is like a live performance like this. We normally work in sort of gallery installations and in immersive and making virtual reality works, but we've also done a lot of works where we have made films in the landscape with performers, and we are also thinking a lot about the hackneyed concept of the digital double and the avatar, and how we can make our performers into avatars. And I don't just mean in the sense of motion capturing them and then turning them into digital creatures, which is obviously what you've seen today, but in the sort of wider sense, we do things with costuming and placing our figures into landscapes, and then we maybe disguise the faces so that the performers don't think about. We try to get people to take away from thinking about their character and actually just see them as an avatar of the landscape. So those are the kind of I guess those are the two things, the two sort of areas that our interest is in.
Also to sort of not necessarily in the past actually, but this book has been quite different. In the past we've, in a way, not silhouetted, but somehow this disguise that Bruno is talking about, not veiling the personality, but allowing the character and the movement to come through without the artifact of skin, hair, and so on. But this piece, for me, coming here and working with Esther and the fantastic team, somehow I really wanted to look at humanity. So I started to think, gosh, look at the faces, the whispering, the changes, the things that we have that are really special and unusual about each of us as movers, but also something was happening in the skin and in the faces, and beyond the skin. So this project has taken me into a different phase, which I've been really excited about. And using the AI camera, which we didn't have any control over, which you saw, which was the video feed, was fascinating because it took you into kind of a nostalgic future, because it looked quite old fashioned, but at the same time it was actually deciding who it was going to follow in the dance. We weren't deciding that. So there's something kind of interesting about that, and the fact that also there were portraits and these things. So there was some, and yet at the same time fitting into this very brightly coloured alternative world in a way. So yeah. So it's been a little switch doing the residency here and having the privilege of working with local dancers and trying to get to know them. And that's been a privilege for me. Yeah. I come to the studio and I was like, oh, so lucky. And also a privilege to work with Marcus, who also lives in Budapest, and he's a musician. So I mean, yeah, so
as well, because the sound was really essential. And
come sit on.
also,
sure.
There's room.
because
now it's
because
this is like right here.
God, but yeah. Like Jackson.
yeah.
I start plugging my books
went, and there was an audition, and there were lots of fantastic dancers. You could have taken all of them, he said.
The audition process was fantastic.
Yeah. But somehow we ended up that you worked with us dancers maybe for like, I don't know, like 8, 10 full rehearsal days, and also individually. And then it was, for me, it was kind of, oh, something is really happening every day, but we only met like, you know, these many times. So I have the feeling that you have your world that you're bringing into the studio, and you ask us really like precisely what to work on, how to work on, and we merged ourselves into the world of skin and releasing technique, which was really essential in terms of how you brought us into our physical self, into our inner landscape, after the world. But I'm just interested in the process of like, you know, mapping your ideas and then coming into the studio and proposing, because you were very clear with some of the first proposals, which actually was there tonight. Like you also mentioned, we did the first day, one of the things, one of the moves. So I really love that you knew you have to focus on something specific, because this much time we work together with the dancers. So a little bit, if you could, like your journey of process, maybe you could just speak about, if you...
You sort of said it.
I did.
You're so good. Journey process. Yeah, we did class, you know, we did skill releasing classes, and Esther and I both practiced that technique and have done for many, many years. And the work is extremely challenging. It's gentle and powerful and allows you to be fragile. All the things that trying to put on stage is something really quite tricky, because often it's very much time, you know, and everyone, but I really want to look at these dances because they knew they could access those spaces in the rehearsal. And another thing that was incredible that happened, which is probably would be a new piece of work, is that I started to do some of the imagery, because a few of the dancers had never done skin releasing before, both Cher and Esther had, so had an experience of it. Some of the younger dancers hadn't, and so it was really important that they did it. But what we found is instead of they were picked on particular classes, sort of jumbled them around, again because of time constraints, because normally there are 15 two-hour classes, so there you go, that's a lot of time already taken up. So we were working together in that way, and I was asking Esther, would this be appropriate, can we do this? You know, jumping in, diving in, instead of doing everything chronologically. So that was super interesting to do that, switching things around, because the technique has a progression in all the classes, and to jumble that progression, I feel like I'm being almost disloyal to Joan Skinner. But I had Esther with me to say, no, it's okay. we can do that. We can do that, you know. So that was really great to have that. And then another thing we did was I left one. There's imagery from the natural world in skill releasing technique, which takes you to a real different place in your imagination. If you can't go there in your imagination, then there are partner work together where touch is really important. So some people can go there in the imagination, or some people go there with touch. So there are these wonderful things for releasing both mind and body, the whole physical self. So through the process, the exciting thing that happened for me, which is probably going to move into another piece of work, is that because the younger group, and particularly Bolash in this instance, sometimes the imagery and the language was tricky. So what we had, and we started to do, which was really amazing, is that Esther would be in class, lying on the floor, and I would be giving a skin releasing instruction or prompt, and then she would repeat it in Hungarian, but she'd be moving. And it was just like, wow, this is kind of amazing, because she was translating, but still embodied in the class, you know. So that was phenomenal. That's another step for the next project. But piecing things together, I don't know whether, I'm nonsense now because I'm so happy. I just saw something. It's great. That these guys did. So that sounds really big-headed. But you know, it's not. It's these guys' work. But I just wondered whether really you're saving because we had a lot of problems along the way. Some of the things we wanted to work with, we had like a dongle in customs. We didn't get like some software because it was in customs for too long. There were all sorts of different. It could have been a very different project. So we were juggling that at the same time as trying to be really on the ground in class. So we were juggling all these things. What are we going to do? Interaction with 5 people can we do? So we did the motion capture very early on of everybody and tried to, in a way, think in the future of what we might be using, which is like a sort of post-production way of, not post-production, but kind of thinking in that way, really, didn't we? We have to be really concise, like 1 minute takes, not huge takes, because Bruno has to do all the cleaning of those takes, and so on and so on and so on. But I don't really want to do that.
Does anybody want to know about techie stuff?
Actually,
I can talk about it for England, so if you want to ask a techie question, I can give a really long answer, it's fine. To do that.
I mean, you might be very, you could ask this question. You are
I'm happy to answer any questions. I can just give a background, full script. So the residency, the thematic theme of the MODINA Residencies is about, part of it is about AI, and the rest of it is about audience interaction. And obviously AI is like a big whoop-de-doo right now. But so I mean, there's different schools of thought about the AI part of it. And so one of the things we really want to, we're personally interested in motion capture, capturing human bodies in space, and there are the conventional, traditional, let's call them motion capture systems, which use markers, and you've seen them with the sort of shiny balls that you put on the thing, right, which is kind of an optical system, and then but the sort of newfangled stuff, which is powered by AI, it's really, I mean, it's neural network stuff, is about pose detection using just cameras, so that instead of having to have markers, you get something where the AI takes a camera image and it can derive where it thinks a human skeleton is based on data sets. And obviously these things are really problematic, but it's clear in the sort of thinking about the technology that this is going to be much more apparent in the future because it's cheap, because basically most of what you're dealing with is just software rather than hardware. So your normal optical motion capture system, you have these really expensive cameras, it's about £2,000 per camera, and you need like a minimum of 8 cameras, so it's really expensive, whereas what we showed at the end is a system called Radical, and it's basically, it's obviously a single camera, and it's normally used for, what you do is you make a video clip of some dance material or some sport, doesn't matter, human body moving in space, you shove it onto the internet, you upload it to the cloud, and they've got some AI up there that just, it's a black box, it churns and it gives you back motion capture data. And recently the developers, I'm talking about when we started the residency, they started doing a live version. So it does it kind of in pseudo real time. So we're streaming a small video stream up to the internet, and then we're getting back, it's processing it, and then we're getting back mocap data, and it's about, you can see it's about a 1 second lag. And there's a couple of modes, there's the fast mode that we're using, and there's a kind of accurate mode, which is much more accurate, but it's the lag is much greater. So, but this is really, really terrible, of course, because we're just burning a lot of data, and we're just burning a lot of energy for this big some server. So we have to rent it, so we're paying for the server because we're obviously like burning a lot of gas. Whereas our optical system, you know, it's all in the software. It's just on the computer. Nothing's getting sent anywhere. And we have been looking during the residency at various other different AI-based motion capture systems, some of which require you to just download the model, which is the thing that's actually going to process the video and turn it back into, look for the humans and figure all that stuff out. So like another system, the system we wanted to use is called the Capture, which is basically you have a local model, so it's a massive install, it's got a gigabyte gigabytes of this big data model that you have to stuff onto your computer, but it's not sending anything up into the cloud. And then we looked at another system which is called RemoCap, which does the same thing, but it uses multiple cameras, like the capturing. And so there are really weird ethical concerns. And so actually using the radical software, as well as the actual environmental impact, which we're very conscious of, there is also the fact that there might be some kids and the data's being sent to the internet to God knows where. Who's looking at it? Where does it go? Does it get saved? So I contacted the developers and they said, I mean, I'm sure they would never lie. Trust so much evidence lie. No humans look at it, unlike things like Siri and stuff, which actually gets heard by humans sometimes, right? When it goes wrong, because they're trying to figure it out. And also all the kind of Google stuff, Alexa gets occasionally heard by humans. But this they said it's black box, and then they just send you out the data. So there's this weird concern for us is about the sort of large